Hi, welcome to Brian's Random Thoughts, the home of the podcast, Brian's Random Thoughts, because I have so many random thoughts. Today we're very lucky to have a special guest, attorney Brooke Girley, producer Brooke Girley, civil rights activist Brooke Girley.
Your sister, Brooke Girley.
My sister, Brooke Girley. Yes, and we've been trying to get you on for two weeks now?
At least.
At least 2 weeks. Well, we did it. We got her. And it's time to get random.
All right.
So I was wondering what we could start off. Maybe tell them a little bit about your history and why you decided to come to New York.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that is random.
I know.
So I started out, you know this. I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. I was going to be like Thurgood Marshall, Constance Baker Motley. I was going to go out there and just like save the world against injustice. And then I got to law school and I took an employment discrimination law class. And I was like, oh no, I can't do this. Because I'm going to go off. Like, it's ridiculous. It's the fox guarding the hen house.
So it was at school.
Yeah.
I always thought it was after you finished school and you started practicing.
No, when I took that class, I realized how frustrating it was going to be a civil rights attorney. Nevertheless, I was 2 years into this law degree and I was going to see it out, and I kept saying, I'll give myself 5 years max, and then I'll just call it quits and change and do something else.
Wow.
So I went in. I like helping people. I like fighting injustice. I just don't like the law, the state of the law. That's too frustrating for me. I was like, oh, no, this is not how we're going to do
When
it.
you say state of the law, what do you mean?
So it's just basically, we don't have any rights. We think we have rights, but when you go to court to sort of vindicate those rights, the court just throws it out. Most people don't even get their day in court. They don't have a trial. And so, like I said, it's literally the fox guarding the hen house. You have these super conservative judges who are there to interpret the law and all of that. And, surprisingly, they don't really find that discrimination is a reasonable thing or something that occurs. So I was like, no, there has to be a different method for fighting injustice and racism in particular. So I wanted to do something that's educational and then something that's also entertaining. And so I changed careers. I went to seminary in between all of this. And then I decided, I'm going to take this big leap. And I came up to New York to get into media production.
Which you currently are working.
Right, as a producer for this new Christian network.
Now that must be crazy to go from working as a civil rights attorney to a producer. Now, do you have any producing background?
Not as far as training in school, but I have written and directed 2 plays that dealt with African American history. I did a documentary in college when I was studying abroad in Ghana. Called the class was called Document in the African City. The documentary was called In Search of a Black Jesus.
This is a chorus?
Yeah, that's what we made our film. It was called, because when we were there were a lot of images of Jesus, but he was white. And we're like, we're in this black country. Where's the black Jesus? But of course, Ghana was colonized.
Wait, so is that a thing? Like, multicolored Jesus, where you're based on where you're traveling to? Like, does Jesus's complexion change?
Well, that was kind of what we were exploring, and at least in Ghana, I can say no, Jesus was white. But like I said, Ghana was colonized, and so the colonizers not only brought themselves, but they brought their depiction of Jesus, and so people just sort of stayed with that. And when we interviewed people in Ghana, they're like, we don't really care what color he is. It's not about his skin tone, it's about what he did.
Right.
And so, but then we did end up finding a black image of Jesus, but it was from an African American who was there in Ghana. She worked with the program. And she got her image of Jesus from Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia, she was saying, if you go there, they have images of Jesus and he's black, but Ethiopia was not colonized. So they have no problem depicting Jesus in their own skin color. I mean, that's what the Europeans did anyway, but people don't realize that, a Jew living in that time period did not look like blonde hair, blue eyed.
Okay.
A good book on that is called The Color of Jesus, I think. The Color of Christ.
The Color of Jesus.
The Color of Christ, I think, is the name of it. It's
okay.
a book.
I will definitely look that up. I'll put a link in the bio or in the description if you want to go look into that book, if we can find one for you. Okay, so you make this change and now you're here in New York. How are you liking it in New York?
I love it. Well, as you know, I lived here. I went to undergrad here at NYU, so I'm back in New York. I said I have returned to New York, and which is
although
so
you were here
funny because
in the early 2000s, right?
2003 to 2007,
and it's nothing like that.
I wouldn't say it's nothing. I mean, obviously,
I would say it.
It's still. I feel like there's obviously the subway's still here.
Yeah,
you still
but even
have
the
all
subway is different.
I don't know.
I remember
it costs
being
more.
terrified on the subway.
I
remember. So when I came to visit, no, I wasn't visiting. I was auditioning for Juilliard.
Yeah, that was yes.
And
what year was that?
Oh, I can't remember.
I couldn't either because I was like
2004.
No, because I wasn't at school.
2008 or 9.
It was one of those. It was either 2000. It was because it had to be the next year after I graduated because B&T were still here, and I think we stayed with them. We stayed with.
Oh yeah, I thought that was your place, but no.
No, it was because I didn't live there, and I had to ask them.
Okay, so I remember around that time, a couple of my friends had gone up to visit New York, and one of them got jumped and robbed. But it was later. It later came out that this person was looking for drugs.
Well, duh.
They conveniently left that part out.
Yeah, I was jumped.
They were like, "Hey, man, did you hear about this person? He got robbed in Brooklyn." And I was like, "Oh, that's terrible, New York. What everyone thinks." And later, I found out. So anyway, I didn't know that at the time. I found out later. But you were like, get on the train, go uptown. Now, if you're not from New York, that doesn't mean anything to you. Because it doesn't, it says it, but most of them say like Manhattan bound or the last stop on the train. So, of course, I got on the train. I went the wrong way. And I went into Brooklyn. And I started freaking out. Because I was like, this is it. This is how I'm going to get robbed.
Oh my God.
They said, don't go to Brooklyn. I'm in Brooklyn. I'm on the subway. I've seen the movies Ninja Turtles. It's just, it's terrifying. But I feel like now everything is just so, with the exception of the D train and the A train late at night. And sometimes on the L if you're way out in the sketch. But you don't go out like past on the L train, like to Broadway Junction and further.
No, I mean I have no need.
Yeah.
But I have been on the L. Okay, I've been there. But no, I don't go out. I mean, there's nothing out there. Yeah. But I still feel like it's not. I didn't feel unsafe when I was here from 2003 to 2005.
You were also living in what was the neighborhood you were?
First, I was living in Washington Square Park, which is by Greenwich Village, and then I lived in the financial district.
So it makes sense.
That's where the school was. But I still walked around the city and.
See, I lived when I first moved here in 2010 on 151 in Broadway, which is, I believe, Hamilton Heights. Washington Heights is arguable, but that was crazy. I remember the first weekend I went. It's like I was coming home and there was like 20 drug dealers just chilling in front of my student. I was like, okay, well this is living in New York.
It was still safe, right? You still...
Yeah, it was... I've never once had any issue in New York. Right. I've never felt any kind of way. Right. So...
I mean, it has been gentrified as far as Brooklyn area. That was happening, though, in my last year.
How do you feel about the gentrification? It's tricky for me.
It's tricky because it's great to revitalize an area, but when... doing so means you're moving people out and making them homeless or making it harder for them to find housing, then it's like, are you really doing any good? Why can't you do both? Why can't there be a solution where we revitalize the neighborhood without displacing the people?
See, this is my conflict always. On one hand, I'm not excited about people being moved out and displaced, but then I have to be honest with myself. Would I live in that area if that process had not taken place? I know for a fact that where I live, people said used to be extremely dangerous. And because of the gentrification process, I was able to feel comfortable there, but it came at the cost of the people living there. And
I mean, that's still kind of what I'm saying, though. Revitalize it, but make it such that the people who are there can still stay there. The people or the crime that you see happening is a function of poverty and sort of dilapidation in the area. So if you just sort of, like I said, make sure that that comes up, then some of the crime that you see will go down, I believe, and you help, of course, address the poverty issue.
Well,
you can have people who you can still feel safe without displacing the people.
So then, okay. I mean, that sounds great, but I feel like when they come in and they bring in the new stores or they revitalize the stores, then the cost of everything rises. So
but
the rent goes up. Yes.
Does it need to? I guess is my point. It doesn't have to. Yes, it does, obviously.
It doesn't have to, for sure.
Right. And so it's just don't make that go up. You can bring in your Whole Foods on 125th. And the Whole Foods prices can be Whole Food prices. And the Abercrombie and Fitch.
Abercrombie and Fitch.
Yeah, that store, whatever. I never shopped there.
Neither
that
did I.
one is there. You can have all those things there, and they can be expensive. And so maybe the people who live in the neighborhood won't shop there, but you don't need to price out everybody else. But it's a matter of pricing the people out.
I feel like maybe a solution, a practical solution, or a common sense solution would just be that within a certain district or however they block off those communities, a certain percentage has to stay untouched. You know what I mean? And it would just be, I know it would be unfair to the tenants because that's really what the deal is. They bring in the new business, everything goes up so they can raise their prices. That's what, and then it just trickles down to the families. But it's tough. I've always struggled with that. I mean, I definitely feel bad, especially because, when you move in, I remember moving in 2010, and then over the course of the time, seeing families have to move out. Like when I first moved in, there was a family that lived right next to me, and I think on the first rent hike they had to bounce.
Mm-hmm.
And it's already expensive to live in New York.
Right, and it's just ridiculous. But
that's crazy too. I don't think most people realize. I don't think it's possible to live in New York without a roommate
or a family
or your family helping you.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people in the advertising agency or advertising business, media business, producers making 6 figures still looking for roommates.
Where are they living? Because I feel like you could find a place. If you're making 6 figures, you can live by yourself.
You could.
If we're talking about all 5 boroughs.
You could.
Not around Central Park.
You could, but you have to remember that a 1-bedroom, like remember, what was that? It was $1,600, that 1-bedroom that we went to? And it wasn't even really like a 1-bedroom. What were they calling it? A junior?
Oh, a junior bedroom. 1,500. 14 or 1,500.
It was 1,500.
Yeah.
1,500 for that.
That's ridiculous.
So, like, imagine what it must be.
But it was in Harlem, the up-and-coming area.
Doesn't matter. So, but think about
that's
it.
What I'm saying.
That's still considered the fringe of Manhattan.
But where we stay, in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, it's a little over 1,500. That was a junior bedroom, which was no bedroom at all. So yeah, I mean it's the same price for 2 different apartments, and one is much nicer and has more room.
But so yeah, okay, it is possible. A person making 6 figures could definitely afford this place by themselves, but it's not that common to find these type of situations. And generally, it's knowing somebody and just having a lease exchange. Like you take over the lease, so it's just difficult. I remember looking for new spots, and I would see all the time a room. I know my friend, she was paying $1,500 for her room in Williamsburg.
I was paying $1,200 for my room
in
Harlem. Yeah.
So so what is the price of that?
But then I also wonder how much is that rent total, because I feel like sometimes people may put the bulk of the rent on their person who's renting out that room.
I definitely think that happens sometimes, and it's legal if it's furnished. If it's unfurnished, it's illegal.
Oh really?
Yeah.
But that makes sense because like what is this?
Right. I mean, all you have to do is move in. You know. So.
Right.
But, you know.
No.
New York. Living in New York is a crazy experience. It's a crazy experience.
But
So
I will say I enjoy it more now as an adult. I mean, I was an adult, a young adult.
no, I know what you mean.
Because I came here at 18, first time. But I enjoy it.
Fresh from Florida.
Fresh from Florida. But I had been going away over the summers.
Right.
So it wasn't like my first time away from home, but still, fresh from Florida, Ocoee, Florida. No one knows where that is.
Let's just say Orlando.
Orlando, but Central Florida. But I'm still saying like Ocoee is a smaller city, and but I enjoy it more now in my 30s than I did before. I just have a greater appreciation for it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because I never thought I would come back here. I said, God, I'm not coming back to New York unless either there's an awesome job there waiting for me, like I got it, and I just need to relocate, or I get married and then my spouse and I relocate up here, or he's up here or something. Yeah, those are my two conditions. So neither one happened, and yet here I am. I had no.
Why didn't you not want to come back?
I was over it. I was just over the city.
Yeah.
All of it. And I definitely didn't want to raise a family here. I still don't want to. I like it as a single person in the city. I wouldn't want to raise kids in the city. I need a house with a backyard so they can run around and play. Just too much going on here. I don't want to live in this. But then again, I said I wouldn't come back, so let me not say that.
Right. You never know.
But I still feel the same way about raising the family.
Yeah.
I mean, there's suburbs.
There's pluses and minuses. The school system is really good here, or a lot better.
But it's also very segregated. But that's America.
That's America. I mean, it is what it is. So, there were some things I wanted to ask you.
Ask.
So,